News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Garrett Ray, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. This morning in the studio, you have Brice Payne and Garrett Ray. And today we are talking about the top 401k frequently asked questions in 2024. Good morning, Brice. How are you doing?
Morning, Garrett. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing all right, sir.
How'd your Panthers do in preseason?
Well, we finally got to see Bryce Young for the first time in preseason. Looked pretty darn good. I think he went 6 of 8 passes for a touchdown. So, hey, man, Super Bowl, it's coming.
Garrett is a self-proclaimed football stats nerd out there, and he knows just about every number you could think of. So, power to you. We've got the Broncos v. Panthers on October 27th, and scheduled to catch that together.
And Zach Wilson looked decent, though.
Yeah, he did, actually, for a backup. Not too bad. All right, well, let's go ahead and start things off here with our Wealth Guardian Service Salute, as we want to do every week. We want to just take a moment and acknowledge and recognize and extend our appreciation to everybody out there who puts on a uniform, one of those first responders, somebody who puts themselves in harm's way for the good old Stars and Stripes. And we want to take a moment and thank you and your families for doing that. We know it is oftentimes an under or even unappreciated venture, and we just want to take a moment and thank you. So thank you very much for your service. And then the second thing we always do here before we get started, and this is Garrett's idea this time, is we ask a question of ourselves to better get to know your Wealth Guardian's financial planner. So Garrett, what question did you want to throw out to us today?
Yeah, so this might be a fun one. So the question that came up was, let's explain to the audience the food that we thought we weren't going to like, but ended up actually liking once we tried it. For me, I have a buddy that lives out in Hickory, North Carolina, and his family was big on this breakfast food called liver mush.
The name alone, you just lost me.
Yeah, and so, I grew up in North Carolina, too, and hadn't really thought about it. It's kind of more of a regional food, kind of more, as you get closer to the mountains, it's more popular up there. So, he whips this stuff up one time. He's kind of frying it up like sausage and, kind of puts it in between like 2 pieces of toast with some butter. I'm like, man, I don't know about this. And he's like, yeah, just take a bite. Stuff is delicious.
Really?
Yeah. So my wife laughs at me, like, if we're ever up kind of towards like Boone or, Asheville and stuff, and I see it on the menu up there at a breakfast place, I'll always get it. And she just turns her nose up at it. So,
wow.
Yeah. Liver mush.
Yeah. Liver mush. Those are 2 words that don't sound good as part of a food. Well, mine, and I've only eaten this once, and it was on a dare, blodpølse, which is perhaps Norwegian for blood pudding. And it actually, obviously the sound of it is terrible because it is made from blood, but the taste wasn't bad at all. But I just was not going to go back and frequent that. And there's not too many restaurants that you can only have a side of the blood pudding, please. So, that was something that I was sure that I was going to have a hard time keeping down, but it wasn't bad. Yeah. It wasn't bad at all. All right, well, let's go ahead and step away from the liver mush and the blood pudding and move into the top 401k frequently asked questions in 2024. Obviously, Garrett, 401ks, as retirement specialists, we sit down with a lot of people every year who are approaching retirement, want to make sure that they've got all their I's dotted and T's crossed, if you will, making sure that they're not making any mistakes and moving into that retirement phase of life, stepping away from the wealth accumulation phase of life into the wealth distribution phase of life. And for a majority of them, they have a majority of their savings in pre-tax accounts, 401ks and IRAs. And while Uncle Sam considers basically 401ks and IRAs more or less the same thing, there's some different rules around each of them. And what you can contribute to them, when you can take distributions from them, those are all different. And so we've got a couple of questions here about 401ks, and I think it might be particularly relevant for people who are approaching retirement who do indeed have a majority of their investments through their pre-tax accounts, their employer-sponsored plans. And so the first question we've got here around 401ks is, my company plan offers a program where I can get advice on my 401k for a low fee. Good idea?
Yeah, I guess I've got kind of 2 sides to my answer here. First and foremost, if you're new in your career, just getting started, lots of times companies about once a year will bring out a representative from whatever financial institution custodizes your plan.
Right.
So let's say your 401k is custodized with Empower. It's, of course, your company's plan, but the money is actually in the plan is with Empower. And they'll send out a representative from Empower to speak about your plan, what investment options you have inside of it. They might go into a couple different strategies, that sort of thing. If you're just starting out, or even if you're kind of in the middle of your career and you're not retiring for, 15, 20 years, not a bad idea. You should at least at a minimum know what you have inside of your 401k. You should be able to get an idea of what sort of investments, or most likely mutual funds, how risky they are or how conservative they may be based on, whether it's a target date fund, that sort of thing, which I'm sure we'll get into later. And understand, at least in a relative sense, how exposed am I to the ups and downs of the market with this investment choice. So I would say if you're just starting out, gathering knowledge about your 401k, wanting to be an informed investor, yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We have the opportunity to manage people's 401ks here at the Wealth Guardians and charge a fee for that. But we don't do that because the main reason is that we want to be able to give the best advice that we can. And in 401ks, people are limited to maybe a dozen or so mutual funds. Well, one, we don't like mutual funds in the first place. Not a big fan of them. They're kind of cookie cutter, do-it-yourself type of investment opportunities. And so the type of advice that we could give when somebody only has 12 or 20 mutual funds available to them is somewhat limited. Now, if somebody is a client of ours and they still have money in their 401k, have not rolled it over to an IRA, and we have invested their other monies that they're non-qualified, they're Roth accounts, they're whatever, and we're giving them tax recommendations on how to pay Uncle Sam as little as possible, all the things that a financial planner does. We are happy to go ahead as an extension of our service and take a look at what investment options they have in their 401k, take a look at them, evaluate them, and give them recommendations on where they should be until our next annual review. And we're going to take into consideration how long until they're retiring, what their overall risk tolerance looks like. We're going to take into consideration what investments they have under that we're managing, and so that we're not doubling up on too much, or maybe the 401k is going to be more the stock side of the portfolio, and the IRA or the Roth that we manage is going to be more the protection side of the portfolio. It's certainly a possibility. So we do that, but we don't charge a fee for it here at the Wealth Guardians.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, Brice, I think it's important for the audience to know that it's very common for someone who becomes a client, starts a relationship with us. They may have 4 or 5 years left of work and physically retire from the job. And if they have an active 401k with their company during that time frame, we're more than happy to give advice on the investments inside that 401k as an add-on. What our plan is.
Right, exactly. All right, well, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. In the studio this morning is Garrett and myself, Brice, and we are taking a look at the top 401k frequently asked questions in 2024. Of course, your 401k is your pre-tax account, so any money that you put into a 401k, just like an IRA, you've not paid any taxes on it when those monies come out of your paycheck, but when you do in time take distributions out of it, because Uncle Sam will make you take distributions out of it even if you don't need them, you got to pay taxes on the full, everything that you're taking out there. So it is important to make sure that your investment strategies in those do jive with the fact that they are pre-tax accounts. So the second question that we got here is, should I contribute as much as I can to my 401k or only as much as the company will match? Now, this is an interesting question. So we can't make a recommendation to everybody because there would be certain things that we would need to know. But as a general rule of thumb, the order of which you would at least consider making your contributions for retirement would be starting off with your 401k up to the company match, because that's free money. That's your employer says, I'm going to give you this amount of money. If you don't contribute to your 401k, you're basically saying to your employer, I don't want everything that you're willing to pay me. So go ahead and contribute what you can, assuming that you don't live paycheck to paycheck. Then as step 2, once you've made the match, or you've maxed out the match that the employer is going to give you, contribute to an IRA. Now, why would you say, well, why an IRA, Brice, and not just keep contributing to my 401k? Well, we'll go back to the 401k in a second. But the reason you would want to next turn to your IRA is because of the investment options inside your IRA. Keep in mind, again, your 401k probably only has a dozen or so investment options. Those are mutual funds. There are hundreds of thousands of investment options out there in the open market. So if you contribute all that you can straight to your 401k first, and maybe you don't have money to contribute to an IRA after that, then you've given up on a plethora of what is likely to be more sound investment options than what is available to you in your 401k.
You've lost some of your free.
Yes, exactly. So let's move over after you've maxed out your match. Let's move over, contribute to an IRA. And again, that might be a Roth, and we might be talking about Roth 401ks as well. That's where Garrett and Doug and I would have to know what your tax situation is, how much you've already got in a 401k to be able to give you advice on whether it's correct to start contributing to a Roth or not. That's a whole other question, but it's a very important question that we could tackle on a whole other show here. So then contribute to your IRA or your Roth. Once you've maxed that out, which is now what, Garrett, 8,000, 7,500? Okay, so you're 7,500 if you're under 50, 8,000 if you're over. Now, once you've contributed to that and you've maxed that out, okay, then we can go back to our 401k or Roth 401k, max out that because that's the rest of your pre-tax monies. And then if you still had money after that that you needed or wanted to contribute for retirement, then you could go into a non-qualified account and not do brokerage account, TOD account, individual joint tenant. And then, you've got a plethora of investment options there as well. All right. Well, speaking of taxes, because we are talking about tax-free accounts here, we do have our tax strategies to transform your retirement seminar coming up. And so put this on your calendar, Thursday, October 3rd, and again, Tuesday, October 8th at 6:30 p.m. at our offices in Clemens. We are doing that free seminar, no cost or obligation to attend, but you do have to register. And so if you are preparing for retirement and you want to have a good understanding of how the tax world that you have known for the last 40 or so years is about to be upended when you retire, because you're going to have different sources of income. You're going to take distributions from accounts as opposed to contributing to accounts. You want to have a good sense of this before you retire, then attending our seminar, Tax Strategies to Transform Your Retirement, Thursday, October 3rd, Tuesday, October 8th, 6:30 p.m. Is a great way for you to start getting an understanding of everything that's going to be facing you tax-wise when you retire. We are holistic financial planners. We do have a good understanding of how taxes work in retirement, and we'd be happy to share with you the information that we have and that we frequently rely on when making recommendations to our clients on how to pay Uncle Sam as little as possible. Our phone number to register is 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. You can also visit us at thewealthguardians.com and click the events tab and register that way as well. Again, no cost or obligation to attend, but you do have to register. Now, we do have to go to break, and as we always do before we go to break, we've got a trivia question here. And I'm going to ask this particular trivia question of Garrett because I am actually related to one of the people in this trivia question. My mom is a big genealogist, and so related to a lot of interesting people, and one of these two here I am as well. Garrett, are you ready?
I hope so.
200 years ago, during their expedition across the American West from 1804 to 1806, explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark traveled with a French fur trader and his young Shoshone wife. What was her name?
Ooh, okay.
All righty. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the first segment here of the Wealth Guardian Show. Please stick around on the other side of this break. We'll see if we stumped Garrett. We'll also go back to more frequently 401k asked questions. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI, and this is 96.7 FM WTOB. News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio, along with Garrett Ray this morning. And in the second segment, we're going to continue our discussion on frequently asked 401k questions. Now, before we answer the trivia question that we tossed out to Garrett here and left you hanging with, I've got two questions for you. Are you planning to retire before long? Have you met with a retirement income certified professional who's also a fiduciary to make sure you're making the best decisions for those retirement plans? If not, I'm going to invite you to take us up on a complimentary review of your current situation. So as certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, and tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So if you put aside at least $400,000 and you want to take us up on this no-cost, no-obligation review, give us a call, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Or go to our website, thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. All right, so the trivia question. Garrett,
I'm waiting.
During their expedition across the American West from 1804 to 1806, explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark traveled with a French fur trader and his young Shoshone wife. This was 200 years ago. What was her name? I'm going to make it a little bit easier here. I'm going to give you a multiple choice. So was it A, Katarri-Tekakwitha, B, Pocahontas, C, Sacagawea, or D, Weetamoo?
Okay. I think I have to go Sacagawea here.
Well, where is that little? There it is.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. You got it. Very good. Yeah, it would have been a little tough without a multiple choice there. Yeah. So 1804 to 1806 took him 2 years to explore. That was 200 years ago. But no, it was 220 years ago. Let's do my math, Brice. Way to promote us as financial planners when I can't even do 100 years. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get back to these frequently asked questions. Good job on getting that right. What's the next one we want to do here, Garrett?
Yeah. So as we look at this, the next question we have that, is a frequently asked question is, should I use target date funds in my 401k? And, I'll put some commentary out there, Brice, and be curious of your thoughts. It may be possible, depending on how your 401k is constructed, that you may not have too many other choices other than target fund dates. That being said, if you're in pretty limited option where you have, maybe just one general S&P 500 mutual fund or a series of target fund dates, if you haven't talked to a financial planner before and you have no idea of what your risk tolerance is, then a target fund date, that's essentially what it tries to do, is that essentially as you are younger in your career and you progress forward, over time, your portfolio is going to go from the most risk, basically, and it's going to de-risk you over time as you continue to progress through your career. Why is that? The general philosophy is that as we approach retirement and get closer and closer, we want to de-risk ourselves slowly and surely away from full market risk. Now, if you happen to be an investor that is trying to catch up, or you happen to be a little bit more of, let's just say, like a little bit more risky in your investments, then exposing yourself to more of like a general market index, such as like the Russell 2000, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, something like that, might be an option for you. If you don't have any foggy idea, then a target retirement date fund could be right for you. That being said, if you don't have any foggy idea, maybe it's time
to there you go,
to help you decipher it. But just giving folks rules of thumb, and they're looking over their 401k investments, that's kind of how I would answer that question.
Yeah, it doesn't get really much more cookie cutter than a target dated fund. That date that's on there is the idea of when you would retire. So based on how old you are, how many years out from retirement you are, those retirement dated funds are simply a pool of several mutual funds, some bond funds, some stock funds, some international stock funds, some growth, some dividend paying funds. And then, as you said, Garrett, as the year gets closer, that target year gets closer, you'll find more and more bonds in the portfolio and less stocks. Not a huge fan of those because there's an inherent issue with those that they are more risky than they imply that they should be. So
we've done the work on.
Yeah, we have. We see this all the time. So a retirement dated fund that says, let's say 2025. And that's a year from now. So if you're planning on retiring a year from now, you would expect that maybe around 50%, 40 to 50% of that portfolio would be in bonds.
Right.
Go ahead and look into it. You'll find that is almost never the case, whether it's your T. Rowe Price or your BlackRock or whoever. They tend to be heavier in stocks than what conventional wisdom would tell you should be at that stage. And the reason is they're trying to compete growth-wise with all the other target date funds out there, and they're not going to be able to compete growth-wise unless they're taking more risk. So there's kind of a dichotomy inherent to those that I'm not a big fan of. But as you say, Garrett, if you don't have a lot of worldly idea of what you're doing in your 401k, they're not offering you a lot of advice. All right, that's an easy way to go up until maybe about 10 years from retirement or so.
I would agree.
Okay. What's the next one we want to talk about here?
Is taking a 401k loan always a bad idea? Whoa, that's a tricky one. I guess I would say yes and no. Ideally, we would not want to take a loan from a 401k unless we just absolutely needed the money. Here's my thought on that, is that, if you take that loan, sure, you're getting cash now to use for whatever purpose you have. You are also losing out, though, on the compound interest of that overall account over time.
Right.
So if you just left that money in there to compound, even for a decade, let's say you're 10 years away from retirement, like Brice's last example, you would be surprised how much that grows. And so it's kind of like, you gotta have to weigh it out on the scale. Am I willing to give up that, cash influx today for a greater sum 10 years from now? Only you can make that choice, but that's what you're giving up. Okay, and then when you have the loan, you're charged interest and you're paying it back. Now, the good news is you're not paying that interest basically to a bank or another financial institution. You're effectively paying it back to yourself.
Right.
So if it's a situation where you need a quick influx of cash, you can make whatever purchase you're doing, and you have a plan to pay it off relatively quickly, then it can be a good idea to help you accomplish kind of two birds with one stone. You're paying yourself back a little bit of interest inside of your own 401k plan, which then, of course, has time to grow. So a complicated question, I would just put the caveat that if you are considering this, we'd love to know more details about your personal situation or what's going on so we can help you with that choice. But as a general rule, I'm going to lean no, but there are situations where it could be advantageous.
Yeah, I like the idea of paying yourself the interest rather than taking a loan out from the bank and paying them the 5, 6, 7% interest.
Agreed there.
So if you are in that situation, you do have to take out a loan from somebody. All right, so taking it out from your 401k is definitely one thing to consider. A lot of factors would go into it to tell you what kind of rate you might be able to get from the bank or whatnot, but that is definitely an option. And I do like the idea of paying yourself the interest rather than a third party. All right, well, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. This is Brice Payne and Garrett Ray in the studio this morning, talking to you about 401k frequently asked questions. 401ks are those pre-tax accounts that you have that you're contributing to through your employer preparing for retirement. And speaking of taxes, I want to remind you that we now have on the calendar our next seminar, Tax Strategies to Transform Your Retirement. So here's the dates: Thursday, October 3rd, and again, Tuesday, October 8th at 6:30 p.m. at our office in Clemens. There is no cost or obligation to attend, but you do have to register. Tax Strategies to Transform Your Retirement. Let's say that you're out there, you're 60 years old. You're getting ready to retire in the next 5 years or so. You are probably familiar with adjusted gross income and perhaps even modified adjusted gross income. You've probably, however, never heard of provisional income. That is because that only applies to people who are filing for Social Security. Social Security is taxed in a very different way. There are tax tiers to that, just like there is for Medicare. You're walking into a world that you are probably very unfamiliar with as you retire. Attending a seminar like what we're putting on Thursday, October 3rd and Tuesday, October 8th will be a great sit-down intro to you on how the tax world is going to change once you retire, once you stop contributing to your tax accounts or your tax-free accounts and start taking distributions from them, once you file for Social Security, once you're on Medicare. All of that, your relationship with Uncle Sam changes drastically. So this seminar is a great way for you to get an idea of how those changes will affect you and your retirement. Here's how you register: 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. You can also reach out to us at our website. Go to thewealthguardians.com and click on the events tab. Seating is limited, so you do have to register. But again, because there's no cost or obligation, I would highly recommend, if you're getting ready for retirement, to sit down and get an idea of how taxes and your relationship with Uncle Sam is about to go through a big change. Not necessarily a bad one, but you do have to understand how that relationship changes. While we are not CPAs ourselves, we as holistic financial planners, retirement income certified professionals, fiduciaries, we have a very good idea of how taxes impact your retirement and what strategies you need to implement to make sure that you are not paying Uncle Sam more than you have to. Garrett, do you want to add anything to all that?
I think you knocked it out there, Brett.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for this week. Do thank you for sitting down with us. We appreciate you listening to us every weekend here, but the show is the Wealth Guardians. We help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I want to remind you, sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB.